Franken of Minnesota apologizing to the women who have accused him of sexual harassment, including a news anchor who said he forcibly kissed her, and 3 women who have said that Franken grabbed their backsides while meeting him in public. With allegations of sexual misconduct continuing to surface, there's been a renewed focus on the men in Congress. Michigan Democratic Congressman John Conyers stepped down yesterday from his position as ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, but continued to deny the allegations made against him, even after his office confirmed that it issued a settlement to a woman who said she was fired after resisting Conyers' advances. And questions arose about how the Democratic leadership handles accusations of sexual harassment when House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said on Meet the Press yesterday that she didn't know if she believed Conyers' accusers. Let's watch.
We are strengthened by due process. Just because someone is accused, and was it 1 accusation? Is it 2? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country.
Do you believe John Conyers is accused?
I don't know who they are. Do you? They have not really come forward. And that gets
so you don't know if you believe the accusations?
Well, that's for the Ethics Committee to review. But I believe he understands what is at stake here, and he will do the right thing.
I'm joined now by the NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Casey Hunt. Casey, I've loved your reporting on this. You had a great perspective every time I heard you on this. So the tricky thing here is a number of factors. There's the charge that have not certainly been proven yet, although they seem to be acknowledged in a way, or this settlement was made because this woman didn't do what the chairman wanted her to do. But then there's the Black Caucus power. I worked on the Hill all those years. I know the enormous power of the Black Caucus within the Democratic caucus and the sensitivity about matters of seniority, the ranking membership, chairmanships, which these members spent decades to achieve, very sensitive about anyone being pushed aside. What happened yesterday to get Conyers, who was a very stubborn guy, to give up his ranking membership on that committee of judiciary? What pushed him?
Well, Chris, you're absolutely right about the politics at play here, and it's part of why Nancy Pelosi stepped into what every Democrat I've talked to has privately said was a pretty big mistake on her part in that Meet the Press interview. And the reality is, you know, a lot of her power, she was Speaker, now she's Democratic leader, has come from the Congressional Black Caucus, and she's come under fire in the past. She pushed Charlie Rangel out of the Ways and Means Committee when he had some ethics problems, and she's been treading lightly, and my sources tell me she has been working behind the scenes throughout this process to try to encourage this outcome starting on Tuesday when these allegations first came out. My understanding, based on my sources, is that there was an agreement that he would step aside today, but after that interview that she did with Chuck Todd, it was made clear that the timing of that needed to accelerate. And it was, I think, around this issue of sensitivity to the CBC that you bring up. And we should note, too, that there was some pressure from members of the CBC who said, hey, you should step aside while this investigation unfolds.
Well, let's talk about Al Franken, because I think Franken has, you know, I don't even know these. I know the circumstances. I accept them almost prima facie. I don't think there's really been a serious dispute about what he did in these circumstances on the USO tour, the 7 tours he took, what he did in that case, in that rehearsal. It seems to me what happened. So we're left with these facts. The one about the time where he grabbed some woman at a state fair, that seems to be what happened. He hasn't denied it. He says he can't remember it. But assuming that these cases have merit, it seems to me the Senate is left in the Ethics Committee with a couple of options. They can reprimand him. They can censure him. I mean, Joseph McCarthy was censured, basically. That would be extreme. So we're basically talking about whether he gets reprimanded or not. Isn't that sort of the lay of the game here, of the situation?
I think that's right, Chris. I think a part of this, you know, an undertone that people aren't necessarily talking about is, you know, in some of these cases we've seen that when there's a problem, there's a serial problem. There's a lot of other people out there who come forward. And I think you know, that Senator Franken waited for 10 days, and I think, you know, an ethics investigation could potentially uncover more. I think there's more of a comfort level now that they have an understanding of what actions were taken that, you know, women thought were inappropriate. And I think, you know, you saw Franken approach that with what I interpreted to be real contrition and embarrassment today on Capitol Hill, coming back up. He seemed like a diminished figure. You know, he's somebody with, you know, a big personality who, you know, has, you know, a famous past as a comedian, and he had just started to come out and sort of be that comedian again in public, he sort of set it aside and tried to run as the straight man, the unfunny guy previously. He developed some credibility as a politician and was coming back out into kind of the fuller personality of what we might remember Al Franken from being on SNL and other places. That clearly has evaporated in the face of all of this. So, I mean, we'll see what the investigation, the ethics investigation, uncovers in that particular case. I think that they have some options. They could, as you say, reprimand him. Expelling him would be very rare. Censure would be very rare. Obviously, we've talked about expulsion in the potential case of Roy Moore. I think that would be an extraordinarily extreme example.
Yeah, I think not since the Civil War have they gone that far. And I think we have to keep our eye as viewers and as me in my role. What are the charges? Have they been proven thoroughly? Even though we don't try people in the press, I think that the charge to someone who was fired because they wouldn't have sex with a chairman of a committee or a ranking member is an awful, awful situation. What we know about Al is we know what he did. And it looks like there's not a dispute over facts. We have to look at that and see if there, as you say, I think very smartly, if there's a serial problem here, if there's a behavior problem, which also could merit a lot more serious sanctioning here, a lot more serious. Thank you so much, Casey Hunt. I've loved your reporting.